for a long time there had been a sort of
thing about that.
Well, when these positions, legal writing is like a relative newcomer in the legal academy, because a long time ago, people had more like apprenticeships when they started out in law practice.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, the market dictated that people had to be able to practice immediately, and that there wasn't going to be some long sort of like residency type thing like doctors have. So that's when skills programs really got big. It started like mid-70s, early 80s is when these things started cropping up, and then over the last 20 years they've become commonplace. So like now most schools have pretty, like at least they tout robust skills programs, but the people they originally got to teach them, there's like all these hybrid models different law schools had in terms of clinical programs. And what happened was most law schools, found cheap labor, as you might expect. So they hired a lot of women. They hired women who didn't have geographic mobility, women who had children and didn't want to have the onerous scholarship requirements of a tenure track type of job. So they did have, at one point, sort of lesser credentials. But my co-author, Sue Lemer, and I don't remember when we started this, it was like 5 years ago we had this idea. Anecdotally, we thought, from just going to these conferences, we thought the people that we're meeting at these conferences have increasingly impressive credentials, probably, we thought, as impressive as the rest of the faculty, despite the fact that legal writing professors are often discriminated against in terms of prestige, pay, voting rights, all sorts of things. So you can read our article, it tells the whole story. So that's what we show, is that there were a whole lot of really well-qualified women, mostly, who were making the choice to take this sort of second-tier status job for reasons women typically take these types of jobs, because they have increased childcare responsibilities, because they're geographically, they can't move because of their spouse's job or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. So that would actually tie into your class. Great, yeah. Probably.
We talk a lot in class about the whole glass ceiling phenomenon, and mm-hmm. why are they underrepresented in Fortune 500 companies or law firms, right. Or why do they make less money doing the same roles as men do? Is that the kind of thing you guys talk about in that article too?
Yeah, there's a whole, we talk specifically about legal writing professors and clinicians, and mm-hmm. there's a whole line of articles called like Pink Collar Ghetto, and they're all about women who are basically being held down by the system, and how law schools are discriminating against women.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know a lot about it in law firm context too, because of my writing for the ABA Journal,
right.
And for my book. We have a chapter on law and medicine, so I'm pretty familiar with the experts in that as well. One person that you might want to look up is her name is Deborah Epstein Henry, and her company is called Flex Time Lawyers, and she has a book that's just out called Law and Reorder, where she basically goes through all of this. We think we've tracked law as compared to the other sort of demanding professions, and it's definitely the slowest to change. All sorts of theories as to why.
Right.
One is sort of the tradition of law is that, we always looked at precedent and how things have been done before, and the easiest way to win a case is to show that, a whole bunch of people have done it the same way for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's been very gradual. I think that law firms have been and this is finally starting to break, but the billable hour, is what distinguished it from most of the other sort of top dog fields. And if the commodity is time, women are never going to win, because at least in our society as it is now, and even as men are taking a greater and greater role, women are still usually saddled with more of the child care and elder care responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And so, if time is all we're looking at, if we're not looking at quality, efficiency, anything like that, which basically the billable hour, that's all measured was time, and that's one reason women have not gotten ahead. It's why women have not why there's a bit of a crisis right now in terms of number of women applying to law schools. It's gone down, and the theory is that sort of the word is out that this is not a welcoming profession for women.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, those are some of the reasons. As now in Debbie's book, she talks about a lot of solutions, and she thinks at the end of the billable hour model is going to be a really good thing for women, because then the things that we're instinctively or naturally sort of better at will be valued. So if FaceTime, for example, isn't critical, if the sort of schmoozing networking within the firm is less valued, I mean, those are things that, you know, women just don't usually have the time when you compare them to their male counterparts who oftentimes have a full-time at-home spouse. You know, they can't compete. And I think like another piece of this is generational. I think that from Gen X down, so Gen X, millennials, you know, basically two of the generations that are in law firms right now, having some sort of, I don't really like the term work-life balance, but that's the label that we know for it, is much more important than it had been in previous generations. And so, you know, the firms are really starting to feel that pushback that they have to, that it makes economic sense as well for them to be a bit more reasonable in their expectations, because they're not going to be losing people at such a rapid rate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the attrition rates, if you look at the National Association for Law Placement now has a whole bunch of studies where they track career arcs, and they show how many large firm, mid-sized firm, small firm, government type associates, how long they stay in their first jobs. And it's, I mean, the most recent one, I mean, they're all like less than 2 years, you know. But you could look up the numbers, because I can't quote them to you off the top of my head. But I mean, and I'll show you. I have the book upstairs that your library will have. But I mean, the statistics are pitiful. So I mean, and when you see the kind of budget that goes into recruiting and developing these young lawyers, I think, you know, there's finally some recognition that this is not a winning formula that they're working with right now. You know, and that, you know, it's time. It's finally time, and the clients are demanding it. You know, so the billable hours, I don't think is going to be the main mechanism probably 10 years from now, which is huge. I mean, it's seismic shift in the legal profession, but like doctors they don't make their money from the time they bill. You know, I mean, they do in the sense that they charge out for procedures and such, but you know, the shift work is a lot easier in medicine. You know, in terms if it's time that you're worried about, you know, there's actually a whole new type of position that's come of age in the last 20 years called a hospitalist, and they're basically in-house doctors at hospitals who treat other people's patients who are, you know, very sick because they're in the hospital. So like in the old days, you know, doctors used to come in and out and they would see their own patients. Well, now they have this whole team in the hospital so that those doctors, so that, you know, doctors kind of turn over the case. Well, about 60% of people taking those positions right now are women, because, which is huge, because it's predictable hour work that is still challenging because it's in a hospital environment, which is, you know, considered to be prestigious in the sense that from doctors' points of view, because they get interesting cases, because people who are really sick end up in hospitals rather than just being at like some local doctor's office. So that's the kind of change that's come about that's benefited women in a different profession.